our engagement, and our expanding of our brands. So when we think about the academic advising profession, I often want to have us all ponder today about what inspired your career in academic advising. Um, it's something I talk a lot about with other professionals across the world, and we all have unique reasons why we joined a career like this. Some have very good experiences with a counselor or advisor in their own undergraduate or graduate experience. I've talked to some advisors who disliked their advisors and did it as a way to give back and do it better. And obviously, it's a rewarding career because, again, at the end of the day, we get to inspire our students, learn from them, and also they learn from us, etc. And so I think something as well, if we think about the history of advising, is that it's been around since the Middle Ages in the European universities. In the States, we've seen it develop through Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore, Maryland. We've seen the field expand in the United States after the 1970s here. And even within the South African history, reading up about the history of the last 15 years in South Africa, it's really beautiful how academic advising is formed and developed in your country. So it's actually really cool. There is a life cycle, I think, of an advisor just because we have a beginning, middle, and end. At the times when you're looking for jobs, you might think of a job description that you're reading and you decide to apply because it intrigues you. And then what's nice about it is that it's a whole process for how we all um, develop through there. A lot of things that colleagues of mine struggle with in the field at times is the idea of an advising ladder. Do I want to move up in my field? Do I like being an academic advisor? Do I want to move up to administration? We have a lot of different models in the United States for advising ladders, how professionals can develop. The structure you see here was an advising structure created at my last institution, Temple. I came in under the new advising structure. The way it was over 15 or 20 years ago was not very welcoming to advisors. There weren't ways for us to move up. And I think what you'll find is if you look at different job interviews and different descriptions, you'll see different names of positions that are just not these four. Because again, we're in all different areas of a college system in the States. Actually, just in the county I live in New Jersey, there's four different higher educational institutions, and all four of us have different advising models. And that's really hilarious in just a small concentrated area. A quote I had found in my research came from a South African scholar that said that academic advisors tend to be primarily focused on students as social beings, concerning themselves with the day to day challenges which students face. A lot of the stereotypes of academic advisors that we simply are just doing course selection, academic planning, we're helping students find their academic disciplines, majors, and minors. And it's not just that. It's about human interaction. It's about helping to break down cycles. It's about trying to help a student wherever they might be in their journey. And that in a day, you may see 6, 8, 10, 12 students, and each one of those students are on their own pattern and journey. And I think it's important that if someone were to ever say, that's all that you do, we do well beyond what the job description states. One of my favorite surveys I like to share with professionals in the field comes from the Nakata Journal. It's a 15-year-old survey that looks at advisor satisfaction, but it's still, in my opinion, is still quite admirable over 15 years later. It's also one of the most comprehensive surveys I've seen that has almost 1,900 surveys collected. So it's a lot of data that we found. And what we found from the satisfaction journey is that advisors work in demanding, complex environments where um, the job satisfaction is quite threatened at times. What we found from this survey was that over 90% of the participants said that they agreed and enjoyed their student interactions. Almost 80% were overall satisfied, and about 3/4 of the participants said they enjoyed coming to work. And that information is quite good because if you're not enjoying your student interactions, not overall satisfied with your job, and not enjoying coming to work, it's probably the wrong job in any profession. Years of experience is quite interesting with this survey because professionals with more than 15 years of experience had a higher level of satisfaction than someone who might be mid-career at 3 to 6. And that would make sense because the more years you're in the field, the higher likely you are satisfied because you're more committed to staying in the field of advising. And those not happy will ideally leave the field completely. And I think we've seen many of that happen across the globe, pre-pandemic, during lockdown, and post-lockdown. Some of the environmental factors that we looked at within that survey were looking at things like the variety and benefits and the teamwork aspects of the advising was strongly agreed upon. But when you see that only 2/3 of the participants are empowered, that is concerning. Salary and recognition is always the lowest whenever I read a lot of these articles, and salary is always going to be a big problem. Um, I wish I had the solutions today to help you with the salary side of things, but I can help today at least with the career opportunity and professional development conversations. The conclusion of this article stated that if they, meaning the institutions, value job satisfaction and want academic advising to benefit the advisor and institution as a whole, organizational stakeholders, including managers, must create supportive environments. This is workplaces must be characterized by variety, empowerment, and teamwork, as well as clear communication challenges between the manager, supervisor, and advisor. This statement is over 15 years old, and it still is important that we read through it today because we still have these issues across the globe. We have professionals that are not being respected, they're not being satisfied in the roles, and we are not creating the most supportive environments that we can at the local, regional, national, and global perspectives. I often turn to one of my icons, a man named Tim Gunn. He was on a show in the States called Project Runway. And what I loved in my research on Tim Gunn was while he tells people to make it work, he actually was an academic working at Parsons School of Design in New York City and was an academic dean and actually was probably advising students who were going to that institution. So I often have a picture of Tim in my office or a little post-it note of make it work throughout my day because every day is different. You could have a good day, a bad day, or something in between. But at the end of the day, you have to make it work. You sometimes just have to take it hour by hour, appointment by appointment, or some days your days are just flying by because it's so busy. You don't really have time to even take a coffee break or even time to get a snack. Advisor retention is a very important area of the research that I like to conduct and help to do research on. Retention is very important. And in a student affairs article from 2016, we had learned that we had lost almost over 40% of professionals leaving the student affairs field by the 5th year. But what that article didn't touch on was the 6 to 15 year gap. We were losing another 45% of people that worked 6 to 15 years. And it's quite scary about that because of us going into student affairs, it's a field that is quite noble to go into. And it should be a field that on our campuses today that it should be more palatable and should be an environment that we should want to thrive on and maybe try to go for 15, 20, 25 plus years. The common issues of why professionals are leaving are due to excessive hours and burnout. Burnout was something that wasn't discussed wildly pre lockdown. Now it is a very big conversation in employment circles and advisor circles. Non competitive salaries that lead to alternative career options, A lot of my colleagues who leave the public higher ed sector will go to private sector jobs in industry or work for a big company where they might do training and development. Um, the work-life conflict. Often, a lot of our articles, when we look up specifically professionals that are looking to start families or have family obligations, obviously family obligations come before job. The limited opportunity to move up in a field, or maybe there's not much mobility to move into another area on your campus. The role of the supervisor and institutional fit. Sometimes supervisors lack the training to be good supervisors to their supervisees, and institutional fit is often very important and it can be a mismatch. And also, we hear that there's a lack of challenge and a loss of passion from professionals. More specifically, when we're looking at that supervision and support area, we're learning that it's essential to job satisfaction and that non monetary compensation were ways that some institutions were trying to reduce attrition. This offered job share programs, flex time, which would be, um, you know, working over your X number of hours, you get to kind of work wherever, telecommuting, and then obviously compressing work weeks. We're seeing some institutions allow professionals to work a 4-day work week. You might work 40 hours in a week here in the States, and you might work a 10-hour work day for 4 days rather than your typical 8 hours over 5 days. And what I actually found, because I have an expertise in mentoring, was that 77% of the participants said that they had mentors in the field, but most did not find that their supervisors were their mentors, which ideally I would suggest not finding a mentor as your supervisor, because that lack of leadership and role modeling is really a main issue for attrition. The one thing you must always remember is we must have faith in ourselves as professionals in the field. You're going to have good days and bad days, but you also have to be able to pick yourself up by the bootstraps sometimes. Um, there are days in the field that I've had terrible days and I've really struggled to get through the workday. And sometimes it is someone checking in on yourself or remembering at the end of the day what you're there to do, what is the mission or goal of the day, and how you can make that bad day a better day the next day. Professional development is obviously an important part of our field, and obviously why you're having a national day and a seminar today. Um, I love days like this just because it's an investment in yourself. It's a way to learn from other professionals in the field. How do you get more research out there? How do you make new connections? How do I network with other professionals in the field? Um, what I feel is that training and development is also essential. When we start our positions, we don't actually go and get the list of students and you just start seeing advisees immediately. It takes time to sort of develop your counseling or advising skills, getting comfortable talking with that new group of students. And consistent training and development is really important because we have to be able to kind of make um, the connections as best we can. And the more training and development that we can do as teams, as whole institutions, as whole organizations, the better we can serve the students. Engaging as advisors is also very important. I think that advisor to advisor, we have shared experiences. And a lot of the times we should be developing those meaningful relationships with our colleagues within our campuses, within our professional associations, within regional areas. We need to have those conversations. And I think when you have conversations with professionals like you did today, it's almost like an aha moment occurs and you find new people to join your advising circles to have those conversations that are so important. I often say that informal meetings, whether on Teams or Zoom or in person chats, going on coffee runs are very great. I think it's important to have workshops and make sure your teams are attending them together, help provide updates to new best practices or policies that are going on, and obviously being genuine and authentic so again, making sure that if it's a party of 2, 3, or 10 or more, you want to make sure that all parties are being honest with each other and themselves, and want to make sure that you're communicating well and showing common courtesy, respect, and for self and others. Seeking mentoring is also another great way to find professional development and seek out those engagement opportunities. Um, I've done lots of different mentoring groups in my career. One of the ones I'm extremely proud of was a mentoring program I ran through NACADA in my region, which is the Mid Atlantic region. So we're from New Jersey all the way past down the Washington, D.C. area. And essentially what happened was I was part of a mentoring program that started in 2013. I was one of the first mentees in our formal program. I helped take it over in 2018. And as a result of learning that applicants were not all being paired with a mentor, we really wanted to create a no mentee left behind campaign. So that way, no one was ever turned away, because in our professional practice, if a student came to your office, you wouldn't turn that student away. So in practicing that thought process, we can't turn advisors away wanting to seek out mentoring assistance from another practitioner in the field. Some takeaways that we found from this program was that the engagement level of including graduate and new professionals with 0 to 3 years was essential. Mentoring mid-career professionals, 3 to 15 years, let's say, is also really important. But you can also tap mid-career and senior level administrators to serve as mentors. And those may be your assistant and associate directors, your directors of advising or senior directors, or even advising deans to help out in those areas. I often also have a common mantra of say yes. So I was at a conference a couple years ago, and this was on the light up board, yes to all. And it reminded me of a quote I had heard from a fashion designer named Stella McCartney, who just said in one of her fashion collections, there's a yes on the runway because this is the theme, we're moving forward. And I think it's important in my professional practice to always say yes to anything that I'm asked to do within reason. And one of the yeses I agreed to about 5 years ago was working with a group of advisors in La Trobe University in Melbourne, Australia. I had gotten an email from a NACADA member from Texas in the US who had moved to Australia for an advising position, and she was working on a new team of 20 plus advisors and needed help with their professional development. So we did develop two different cohorts of global mentoring, and we were able to connect with advisors from around the world to connect, and they were from New Zealand and Australia, China and Japan, the Netherlands. We had the UK and Ireland, Canada and the US. What we found was the time differences were wild between the US and Australia, but the west coast of Canada and the US worked really well with Australia because the times made sense with the time differences. So it wasn't a crazy thing to have someone maybe zoom in at the end of their workday when someone's having it at the start of their workday. It was also during COVID, so I wouldn't mind getting on a Zoom at 10 p.m. at night because what else was I going to be doing? Um, Also, the importance of advisor networks are important as well. As Gugu mentioned, my first sort of advising network experience came from working with Temple University. And my third day on my job, some 13 years ago, I attended the advisor group on campus. And it was a monthly group that met and talked about best practices. And it was an hour or 90 minutes for advisors to come together. Now, again, it was an optional thing. And we were also a team of over 100 advisors plus. So if a third of us came to those meetings, it was pretty big. Um, what I found with that was it was important to make connections with my colleagues. And it was also important to enjoy those professional development opportunities. So I often tell professionals who are seeking ways to connect to think about what's available on your campuses and if those groups exist. These are going to be great opportunities to get out of your offices and, give yourself a new way to collaborate across campus. And it may provide both in person and virtual communities. And also, just to sort of think about, is there an advising group on your campus? Find an administrative leader to help sponsor it. Perhaps it's a department chair or a dean or someone in your provost level offices. If you have someone who does all the administrative red tape, who can support your initiative, the more the merrier. Sometimes you can get a budget as that result. Um, and I often say that on these advisor groups, think about creating subcommittees for best practices, mentoring, have a new advisor subcommittee for your newest talent, and even have something for other student affairs collaborations. You might include campus housing, you might include admissions or enrollment management, or your teams that are doing your orientation programming. Think about forming consortiums at the regional level. Some of my favorite work I've ever done is local and regional work because, again, these are great ways for professionals to come together in a quarterly way, ideally virtually, because it might be from across different states and cities. And it also may help create mentoring circles or groups of professionals that are all helping to mentor one another. It's a great way that you might find ways to help collaborate on research and write articles about what is going on your campuses, and also create additional seminar days like these and having local um, drive-ins or maybe national drive-ins and things like that to get the word out and to get more people professionally developed. Obviously, getting involved in professional associations are important. These are just four examples, and many of you know them. Um, I did not know about UCAT until 2018 when I went to a global conference and met their CEO, David Gray, who remains a mentor of mine and someone who I love talking to on a quarterly basis. I did a little bit of work for UCAT for a while, and it was great to learn how the United Kingdom kind of runs advising and tutoring and how it works in Ireland. And in the last year, I joined Caucus in Canada because I had a desire just to want to connect more with just not mainly Americans that were living in Nakata. Nakata, while is very global, a very, very small percentage of that membership is global, non-US, or Canadian. My final points about sustainability in the field of higher education, which has been coming up a lot coming out of lockdown. And I often tell professionals who are interested in sustaining to expand their brands, meaning as we are learning as practitioners, we can be happy as just academic advisors, but there might be opportunities to become a liaison between your office and another office on campus, or take on another functional area. So, at my last job, I helped run the retention report for 3 years. I helped connect with orientation. I was connecting sometimes with peer mentoring. I was helping running the mentoring program for advisors. Other advisors in my last job, they were academic department liaisons. So, my dear friend Joy at Temple was the liaison and still is to the accounting department. So she meets with them quarterly to know what's happening with the curriculum, what can I share with the advisors, how do I make it beyond. I used to run a living learning community with the campus housing office at Temple. So that was another aspect to the job that was really fun to do, to see students outside of just the classroom. Another concept I wish to share with all of you is the concept of horizontal branding. I don't think I made it up, but it was something I'd heard down the line. But it was essentially this idea that after not getting promoted in a role, when I was thinking about moving vertically, I thought about horizontally, how can I rebrand myself to eventually climb the ladder, but develop and gain new skill sets to help me understand what are the skills I'm going to need XYZ to get to become an advising administrator one day. I also think with horizontal branding, it also lets us um, feel less stuck, avoid burnout, and gain new insights to the field. We often tell students that they have their toolkits for success. Well, advisors should build their own toolkits as well. And it's something that is not physically something, it's something that is our internal knowledge, it's our institutional knowledge, it's our professional knowledge, it's our development of learning new theories and counseling and advising practices. So everything you're doing is contributing to developing that toolkit. There's also an idea of creating a kaleidoscope view of your careers. And if you ever looked into a kaleidoscope and just turned the tube once, you'd see that different patterns emerge. All of our careers is a unique pattern. And know that if we think of our careers like a kaleidoscope, we have the power to shift and change it as much as we want. And external forces help to change them. Our experiences help to grow it. And know that each and every one of you are a unique kaleidoscope pattern that shares your unique journey in the field and of academic advising. So, some conclusions today. One is the concept of treat yourself. There's a show in the States that aired many years ago called Parks and Recreation. And these two characters, Donna and Tom, every couple of years would have a treat yourself episode. And it's the concept of give yourself a day off, do something good for yourself. And I tell that to my colleagues to this day that they need to treat yourself because we do work in a high intense, stressful work environment. And you have to let yourself have some grace and allow yourself time to step away from the work. Again, not working today, it's hard not to be on the work email, but I've had to create those professional boundaries, for example, because we're human. And also the importance of finding a squad. Again, while we're not superheroes letting and saving the world, we are a squad of professionals who are helping students through their success. We're helping to be campus leaders. We're helping our institutions move forward with their vision and mission goals. And so, if you don't have a squad, let us know. Join our squad. The larger our squad can be, the louder our voices can be when we are fighting for change in the field. And I want to end with this quote that I had found about a year ago, and it compared student affairs practitioners to being sunflowers. And it's because of the way that sunflowers grow. And it's also the concept that as professionals, we can become so attuned to each other's needs within and across units that we make it a habit of sensing and meeting. So we're not the type of people that say, I'm here if you need me. We kind of have a freaky sense of like knowing of when someone needs help just by seeing or hearing or feeling or by seeing how someone might respond in the office or an email they might send or some type of like a message you might get that makes you want to say, I need to help that person. So these are my references I wish to share with everyone. If you'd like to contact me, I can give you all my information. You can, yep, that's me at 3 years old, and I no longer wear bow ties as a result. And I will stop share right now so we can start to engage.
Very reflective, very mindful. There's a saying that students have on campus, very demure, very mindful. That means we appreciate what you've done. I'm going to open the floor for some questions. If anyone has a question they'd like to present to Gavin. Let's join the squad, Gavin. Constance.
Thank you so very much for the presentation and the encouragement also of seeing our journey from when we grow to when we get established and begin to transition towards the sunset of the career. I would like to find out from your experience what the general situation is, and this might sound perhaps like more an operational question, but it presents as one of the challenges that advisors have, in that most of our activities, even from what was presented today, most of them are add-ons to the student's core curriculum. And even though literature suggests that advisors are actually contributing towards student success, but the way in which advising is treated in relation to the curriculum seems to suggest that, okay, it's a nice to have, not necessarily something that's core to student success. What has been your experience in the, with regards to the relationship between advising and the core curriculum? Thank you.
Well, that's a wonderful question, and I appreciate that. I think over the years, the trouble that advisors have is the other duties as assigned, and there's always a lot of pressure on us to deliver the results, because a lot of the times our higher ups are looking at the data and they're looking at seeing students as just a data point. And I think how I've kind of processed it as is I can only do the best I can do. I can only take on the caseload I can take on for that day or that week. And I often have had to say, yes, it's other duties as assigned, but how does it affect the students at the end of the day? Um, you know, at my last job, that was actually a question we used to ask people for getting the job. What are your thoughts on other duties as assigned? And I often said that's where the fun is. That's where we have to really get into the weeds, is those other duties as assigned. Um, I've often loved it, but often known that that's probably the most stressful part of the position. Um, I often have to also take a step back and think, what is the larger view of it? It's not just how I feel, but how does it affect the advising team I'm on? How does it affect the school that I'm associated with? And what is the contribution that I'm serving? And sometimes the lack of recognition that we get, the data points we can then provide to the higher ups, help to show that advising is not just a touch point on the map for a student, it's a large part of that student experience, and that we must be those power players at the table to help us get more accolades ourselves and respect, but also know if the students are not successful, like advisors, we have to be successful in our careers as well. So if we're leaving, they're not going to be successful. So there's a big connection that's almost like a disconnect in the industry right now, that they're not thinking about practitioner success equates to student success. And I really do believe that. So it's a challenge. It's something I deal with every day still, even in my new role at my new institution. Um, and these days, I just take a deep breath and just say, I can do it. I can do anything within reason, but also know that I have my limits as well.
Thank you, Gavin. Another question from Elizabeth.
Thank you, Gavin. Mine is not a question, it's actually just a comment. Say thank you very much. Someone was already experiencing burnout, someone was already being demotivated. And from what you have said, this is a field where there is a lot of complexities which the senior management is not aware of. And I'm sad to have learned that there's quite a number, I mean, from your experience, that we have left the field to join greener pastures because of the heat that is there. But for us, we want to fight and get out of this space and make it bloom. So thank you for giving us the confidence. And yes, we should have faith in ourselves. We should join squads, those terms and ourselves. They sort of give us more energy. Thank you.
Idam.
Hi, Gavin. Thank you for your presentation. I was just wondering, what do you think is the most important characteristic an advisor must have to make the biggest impact?
That's a great question. I think to help make the greatest impact on your students is to be active with them, to be truly present in those appointments, be good communicators, be great note takers, make sure that even if you're sensing something is wrong with a student, to just send a little email to the student, just checking in with them. Um, in my last role, it was very hard to do that because I had a larger caseload of almost 600 students. And it was a team of like, at one point, we had 7,000 students in my last job. My new job is only about 1,500 students total and a caseload of about 150 right now. So I actually can do a lot more intentional communications to my students. I can make sure that they're coming to see me if they want to come see me. And it's actually, if they want to just stop by and say hi, I have a little bit more flexibility to do that as well. Um, I also think as well, it's about, you know, meeting the student halfway as well. Um, a lot of the things we're thinking about these days are the student responsibility versus the advisor responsibility. And a lot of the times, if it's a traditional age college student that's 18, 19, 20 years old, they're just starting adulthood. So they're also learning how to become adults. So I often treat that it's an experience for the student. So if a student is not showing up to their advising appointments, yes, it's their responsibility to
Gavin,
let
we've
me know.
lost you.
Oh, whoops, sorry. Uh-oh. Am I back?
Sounds like you're coming back, but you seem to be frozen.
Oh,
Data issues.
any better?
We're starting to hear you again.
Okay. Mm,
Can you hear us, Gavin?
I can hear you.
Okay, we're just gonna put the camera off on our end, and I think let's see if that helps.
Okay. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. You're frozen on the screen, but we can hear you.
Yep. It's that darn New Jersey internet. I am so sorry. Okay.
We love seeing you on screen. It's okay.
Okay. Okay, cool. But yes, it's all about student interaction and to make sure that to make it worthwhile that a student they're learning how to be adults as well, and it's a process of student responsibility as well as our responsibility, but it's their responsibility to make sure that they're connecting with us as well. So yeah, that's the end of my question. I'm so sorry before the Jersey internet cut out. Oh my gosh.
Do you have any other questions, comments for Gavin? There's a hand up. Hi, Gavin. It's Sandy here. With the advising communities, I was just wondering, what would you advise a person who would like to start a community for, well, not necessarily like an association, but a community of advisors where we can connect every now and again, maybe every quarter, to just catch up and say, hey, how are you doing? What are you currently doing right now? How would you like us to support you, whatever the case may be? What would you advise a person, an advisor would want to start? What would you advise them to, or rather, where would you advise them to start? And what should they look at as they start there? Thank you.
This is an amazing question and one of my favorite things to talk about. So I often believe in small, local, grassroots types of movements like this. And I would say start small and find your community of 5 to 10 people who are just as passionate as you are. They may be professionals on your campus, they may be professionals within South Africa, they might be just regionally within your different state within South Africa. And I would say start with that small group and think about what are the goals that you want to do with that. And then from there, find support externally from there. If it's from an institutional perspective, work with a group of people from within the advising sector, but also non advising sectors, come together and talk to your supervisors and see how you can informally meet. If it's outside of multiple institutions and you want to form more of a local consortium, get those leaders from those schools. And I would say meet kind of casually at first, but once you get all of your kind of ducks lined up in a row with how you would like to form this network or this group, you have to think about, if you would need capital or any type of budget, or if it's something that you can do for free just by doing local chats like this. It's definitely something it seems complex and difficult to do, but if you have a squad of professionals willing to help you kind of build that from the ground up, I think you can do it quite calmly and quite beautifully. And as you kind of grow it over time, it's something that I had done a few times with just different aspects of the advising field and I would do it literally for no money at all because I would just use Zoom and things like that to connect to people. Um, but it's a process, but I definitely think it's something admirable to do as well. And if anything, you're just having conversations with other professionals, you know, and you can call it whatever you want: chat group, best practices group, advisor development group. But the more you can get people together, I think that's when the real magic can happen. And getting those leaders involved, especially if it's institutional, to support you is number one. So important to get the buy-in from other people. Because again, it's something that might take them away from another part of their job, even if it's an hour to a month that they are giving to that group. You make it worthwhile. You make it worth their time to, take that time away from their work. Um, and I really hope you do this type of group just because I think the more of them that we can create, the more we can support one another in this very small niche of higher education. Because again, if you know one advisor, everyone knows each other. We're not 6 degrees of separation. I think we're like 1 or 2 degrees of separation at this point. So,
Great. Any other last word comments, questions? Kevin, from my side, once again, thank you so much for availing yourself and taking the time off today. You can continue watching Housewives for the rest of the day. Gavin loves Housewives. It's been a beautiful moment to listen to you once again. And we're looking forward to many more engagements. We do have colleagues from UKZN, the University of KwaZulu-Natal, joining the NACADA conference next week. So I hope they will bump into you and have some coffee and chats. They will bring back to this community that we are trying to build together in South Africa. And we look forward to also engaging in other NACADA initiatives that come up. There are global engagements that take place. So I will be poking some institutional representatives in the direction of NACADA to represent South Africa and bring the South African voice into the global community. But mine for now is really to thank you and wish you well for the rest of the day. We'll be in touch soon.
thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful weekend, everyone. It was a pleasure to chat with all of you today.